They said it was her fault, that she wanted too much, that she didn't appreciate stability. On the outside, the perfect couple, flawless photos, a lavish wedding on the horizon. But inside, silence, coldness, and the feeling of being invisible in your own relationship. Until one day, someone else notices you, too attentively, too conveniently. First, the compliments, then the gifts, then the wreckage. One kiss triggered an avalanche that couldn't be stopped, and when the truth came out, the revenge wasn't quiet. It was public. Every step, every glance, every betrayal now belongs to the internet. He could have walked away in silence, but he chose to burn the bridge in front of everyone. She cheated. He destroyed. Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If you're here for the first time, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends or family. It really helps my channel a lot. Please tell me in which city or country you watch this video. I value every one of your comments. So, let's get started. I'm curled up on the uneven mattress in my childhood bedroom, trying to wrap my head around just how disastrously things fell apart. Only 6 months ago, I was posting sun-kissed engagement photos online, soaking in the praise and dreaming up every charming detail of what was supposed to be a flawless wedding. Now, I've become the subject of venomous rumors, the latest scandal in a town that thrives on them, and I can't stop circling back to one haunting thought. How did I let it spiral this far? I'm Harper, and once upon a time, I was engaged to a man named Max. To outsiders, we were the ideal couple. Max had a solid career in finance, and I worked in a cozy little boutique downtown. We looked content, enviable even. But behind the polished smiles and curated Instagram posts, I felt like a shadow drifting around the edges of his world. Max's attention was monopolized by spreadsheets, non-stop meetings, and endless discussions about earnings reports. At first, his ambition impressed me. It felt mature, purposeful. But slowly, admiration turned into isolation. I'd try to express how invisible I felt, and he'd respond with half-hearted apologies and the same tired refrain, "Next week things will change." But next week never came. I longed for affection, for spontaneity, maybe even a dramatic gesture to remind me I mattered. Whenever I scrolled past happy, carefree couples online, laughing in blurry selfies or dancing under fairy lights, I felt a deep ache, a mix of jealousy and yearning. Still, I convinced myself to be patient. We were engaged, after all. Surely things would improve once we were married. That hope became my lifeline, even as I drifted further from the version of myself I used to know. Then everything shifted when Graham Carlisle entered the picture. He wasn't Max's blood relative, more of a late-in-life addition to the family tree, but everyone affectionately called him Grandpa Graham. Though older, he carried himself with a striking confidence that demanded notice. Max's relatives whispered about Graham with wary respect, intense, domineering, hard to please. But that didn't scare me. The first time we met at a family gathering, he gave me his full attention, something I hadn't felt in months. He complimented my dress, admired my voice, even commented on my poise. Meanwhile, Max barely looked up from his phone, his thumbs flying across the screen as Graham locked eyes with me and actually listened. It sounds foolish now, being swept off my feet by someone my grandfather's age. But at the time, his attention felt like oxygen. Max's family barely acknowledged me, but Graham asked about my passions, teased me kindly about wedding prep, and made me laugh, a real laugh, for the first time in weeks. A few days after that encounter, I got a text from Graham. He claimed he'd found my number through a family contact sheet. It felt innocent enough, just a check-in, a friendly, "How are you holding up?" Then the flattery started. Soft at first, then more direct. He said I had promise, that I was wasting away with someone who didn't even see me. I kept insisting to myself that it was harmless, that Graham was just being considerate. But deep down, I savored the attention. We started meeting for casual lunches, always at elegant cafes or bistros Max had never once thought to take me to. There was a quiet thrill in it, something I didn't dare admit to anyone. One afternoon, during one of those harmless outings, Graham slid a small velvet box across the table. Inside was a dainty, glimmering bracelet. I gasped and pushed it back, startled, but he chuckled like it was nothing. "Just a little gift," he said dismissively. My fingers shook as I fastened it around my wrist, already picturing Max's face if he ever saw it. Graham, amused, leaned in and murmured, "Don't worry. Max is too busy to notice anything like this." In that moment, a boundary I never imagined crossing dissolved. Not long after, following a long, draining day at the boutique, I got another message from Graham. "Dinner tonight? Got a surprise for you." Predictably, Max was still holed up at work. I could have gone home and waited, again, for him to remember I existed. But I didn't. I said yes. He took me to a luxurious restaurant with soft lighting and immaculate decor. The staff greeted him like an old friend. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt like I belonged somewhere. Halfway through the meal, Graham reached for my hand across the table and told me, without hesitation, that I was mesmerizing. My cheeks flushed, not with guilt, but with something dangerously close to joy. I felt noticed, cherished, seen. We lingered there for hours, wrapped in easy conversation. Graham didn't hold back. He called Max unimaginative, oblivious. "Letting a woman like you sit here with me," he said, "without a clue." I laughed nervously. I didn't correct him. My silence was its own kind of permission. Later, in the car, he turned to me, cupped my face in his hands, and kissed me. And I didn't pull away. Every logical instinct screamed at me to stop. But the part of me that had been ignored for so long screamed louder. I told myself it wasn't cheating. Not really. And anyway, wasn't this what Max had driven me to? That kiss set off a chain reaction. Graham and I slipped into a clandestine rhythm. More secret meetings. More gifts, designer perfume, luxury handbags, things I tucked away like contraband. I felt guilty, sure, but I also felt desired, possibly for the first time in years. It was reckless. It was wrong. But for the first time in ages, I felt alive. Whenever I showed the slightest doubt or suggested that maybe we were going too far, he'd just laugh it off like I was being dramatic. "You've got everything you need," he'd say with a sly grin. "Why not treat someone who actually appreciates it?" He often took jabs at Max, calling him dull and robotic, teasing that I deserved someone more passionate. And even though part of me winced at those comments, I'd laugh along, pretending it was all harmless fun. But walking away from my engagement was never something I seriously considered. I kept convincing myself it was temporary, just a passing thrill. Once we said our vows, exchanged rings, I'd outgrow this. I'd settle into the future I was planning. I promised myself, no more lies. I repeated that like a prayer. Maybe I was deluding myself, or maybe I was just too sure of myself. I truly believed I had everything under control, that no one would catch on, that Max's emotional unavailability somehow made it okay to chase one last spark. Things escalated. We began meeting in quiet, out-of-the-way hotels. He'd use fake names, claim he was away for business. I'd sneak off under fake plans, inventing girls' nights that never happened. Every meeting came wrapped in adrenaline and regret. But one evening, things changed. He was fumbling through his bag halfway through, mumbling about needing a pick-me-up, clearly frustrated with his aging body and its betrayals. I stood awkwardly near the bed, halfway undressed, unsure if I should just walk out. He told me to hold on, that it'd only take a few minutes. I remember staring at the wall, thinking, how did I get here? But I stayed, chasing that sense of being wanted. When it ended, I didn't feel thrilled, just unsettled, let down. It didn't match the fantasy I'd built in my head. Sometimes it felt ridiculous, almost laughable. I'd find myself silently complaining that his so-called equipment, as he liked to joke, wasn't exactly reliable. We'd wait around for the medication to work, and I'd wonder, in silence, if this was really worth what I was risking. But then he'd pull me back in. Expensive dinners, endless compliments, and reminders that Max didn't see me. Every time we said goodbye, I promised myself it was the last time. But when his name popped up on my phone, I always gave in. I'd use the same excuse every time. Max didn't pay attention. If he cared, he'd see I wasn't the same. The designer bag, the odd gaps in my time. Strangely, in the final weeks before the wedding, Max began acting differently, softer, more engaged, like he was making an effort. He even suggested we spend a whole Saturday picking out flowers, something he would have rolled his eyes at before. But by then, I felt detached. It didn't seem real. I was already intoxicated by the kind of attention Graham gave me. Max's attempts felt too little, too late. I kept thinking, you should have done this sooner. What I didn't know was that Max already knew everything. The night it all collapsed, he told me he had to leave for an urgent work matter. He left before dawn, saying he'd be back in a couple of days. I didn't think twice. After he left, I spent the day watching trash TV, messaging Graham, pretending everything was normal. That evening, after running a few errands, I came home and instantly felt something was off. The apartment felt too empty. Some of his things were missing. His gaming console, a few sentimental boxes, gone. But the real shock was waiting in the kitchen. A small, deliberate arrangement of items. An envelope, a flash drive, a photo, and a pill bottle I recognized too well. My heart started pounding. I grabbed the photo first. It was me, wrapped around Graham in a dimly lit parking lot. The image was blurry, clearly taken from afar. My chest tightened. I opened the envelope. Inside was a short, cutting note. Check the flash drive. Then go online and see how I've introduced you to the world. Enjoy the pills. Goodbye. My hands trembled as I opened my laptop and inserted the flash drive. A folder appeared, filled with video files labeled by date. I clicked one, and there I was, leaning into Graham's car in a dark lot, doing things I never imagined anyone else would see. The footage was grainy, but unmistakable. I slammed the laptop shut, sick to my stomach. My thoughts spiraled. Had Max hired someone to follow me? Or had he been tracking me himself? I felt like I was going to be sick. Despite the dread, I typed in the web address he'd mentioned. It led to a gossip forum, a top post with a cruel headline that used the pet name, "Only Max Called Me." The post didn't hold back. Fiancé caught in an affair with older family friend, caught on tape. A clip from the footage was embedded. The comments were brutal, mocking, judgmental, filled with speculation. Some pointed out the pill bottle in the frame, cracking jokes about Graham's age. I wanted to vanish. Within the hour, my phone exploded with notifications. Texts, DMs, missed calls, Max's relatives, old friends, complete strangers. Everyone had something to say. I was called things I can't repeat, dragged through the mud in front of the world. I tried calling Max. His number was disconnected. I texted Graham. Nothing. No reply. That's when it hit me. I was completely alone. Max had severed every tie and walked away without looking back. By morning, the final hits landed. The wedding venue confirmed our reservation was canceled. The florist demanded a cancellation fee I couldn't afford. The photographer emailed, asking if the date was still on, though there was no wedding left. Then I checked our shared bank account. It was wiped clean. Max had taken everything, leaving me to deal with the mountain of expenses. I reached out to the vendors trying to explain, but none of them cared about the drama. They just wanted to be paid. Meanwhile, Max's family kept messaging, calling me a traitor, a disgrace. They labeled me repulsive, vile, worse than I could have imagined. Max's aunt didn't even hesitate. She left a sharp, emotionless voicemail telling me to stay away from their family for good. I didn't know how to react. My emotions tangled between disbelief and outrage. Part of me couldn't stop thinking that Max owed me a private conversation, some explanation, anything. But he gave me nothing. No text, no call, not even a moment of decency. Instead, he chose to tear me down in front of everyone. That betrayal stung deeper than anything I'd done wrong. Yes, I had cheated, but he had broadcast our most intimate moments online like a punishment. That felt cruel beyond measure. In my desperation, I reached out to Graham, hoping he might offer some sliver of support or understanding. The phone just rang. No answer. Eventually, I found out he'd left town, vanished. Maybe he was hiding, too scared to face the consequences. At first, I was furious. After all, he was the one who had lured me into the affair with gifts, fancy hotels, and hollow promises. But when it all fell apart, he simply disappeared. That's when it hit me. He either used me or threw me away when it became inconvenient. Whatever illusion I had of him caring crumbled under the weight of his silence. When I realized I couldn't salvage anything from the apartment, I packed up and drove back to my parents' house, crying so hard I could barely see the road. I told them only that the wedding was off, that Max had ended it. I couldn't bring myself to admit the rest. Still, small towns have a way of knowing everything. A neighbor saw the Reddit thread. That's how my mother found out. After that, she couldn't even meet my eyes. My father erupted, yelling that I'd betrayed my fiancé with a man old enough to be my dad. Again and again, they hurled accusations, telling me I had disgraced them, shamed the family. I wanted to scream that it was Max who had chosen to humiliate me publicly, but my voice felt small and powerless. Meanwhile, the online backlash snowballed. Strangers called me disgusting for being involved with an older man. Others made jokes, especially about the pill bottle in the video. One message read, "If money's that tight, I guess swallowing your pride isn't your biggest issue." My social media turned into a battlefield, full of memes, insults, and relentless scorn. Just like that, I became untouchable. I couldn't keep going. I quit my job at the boutique after my manager hinted that my presence was making things uncomfortable. My phone wouldn't stop ringing, unknown numbers, endless messages. I changed it, but the gossip always found a new path. Max's family reached out, asking for the engagement ring, as if I still had it. But it was gone. I assumed he'd taken it, along with the rest of his stuff. In all that chaos, I couldn't stop thinking about those strange nights with Graham, sitting silently in overpriced hotel rooms, waiting for him to take his pills, listening to him mumble about feeling old. I used to wince at those memories. Now they filled me with fury. Was this really what I gave everything up for? I reached out to a longtime friend, hoping for compassion. She gave me a cold truth. I made my bed. Now I had to lie in it. She didn't care that Max had destroyed me online. She didn't care how deeply I regretted it. In a last-ditch effort to reclaim some dignity, I contacted the Reddit moderators to have the post taken down. Most ignored me. A few said it didn't violate any rules. And even if it was removed, it was already mirrored elsewhere. The damage was permanent. The internet had taken what happened and twisted it into its own spectacle. I kept telling myself that Max should have come to me directly, that Graham should have known better. But every time I tried to justify my actions, my parents shut me down. My dad kept repeating that I was an adult. I knew the difference between right and wrong. My mom wept and said that if I was so unhappy, I should have ended the engagement myself. The truth is, I never wanted to end it. I just wanted something more, something exciting. This whole nightmare taught me a brutal lesson. Secrets rarely stay buried. I was jobless, disgraced, and still dealing with unpaid bills from a wedding that never happened. My parents demanded to know how I planned to repay the money they'd advanced for the venue, the caterer, everything. I had no answers. Most nights, I couldn't sleep. I just stared at the ceiling, haunted by it all. I kept reliving that final confrontation, Max standing there with a flash drive, the damning photo, those pills lined up like a punchline. In my head, he was the villain who ruined me online. And yet, deep down, I knew I had handed him the weapon. Still, that didn't make what he did right. He didn't just break up with me, he made sure the world watched me fall. If he wanted out, he could have walked away. But instead, he dragged my name through the dirt. That question still lingers. Why? I thought about finding a lawyer, suing him for invasion of privacy or defamation. But I couldn't afford it. And legally, the footage was in a public space. There was no clear case. My dad told me to forget about it, to stop drawing more attention. So I did. Weeks passed. The day that should have been my wedding came and went without a word. I spent it alone in my childhood bedroom, scrolling through social media posts from people who still didn't know the full story. A few shared kind messages, but they were drowned out by the wave of mockery. Even friends I thought were ride or die started keeping their distance. No one wanted to be associated with a scandal. Max had disappeared completely. Rumor was he'd left his job, maybe moved to another city, maybe staying with some old college buddy. I wanted closure, anything. But silence was all I got. Graham disappeared without a word, likely retreating to one of his opulent hideouts. No texts, no explanations, just radio silence. He didn't even bother to acknowledge the chaos he'd pulled me into. The betrayal ran deep. Max humiliated me in front of everyone, and Graham pulled me into something he had no intention of handling with any sense of maturity. My life began to quietly fall apart. My parents kept nudging me to find another job, but every place nearby either recognized me or wasn't willing to take a risk on someone linked to scandal. I even tried my luck in towns farther away, thinking maybe anonymity would give me a fresh start. But the internet doesn't forget. I was constantly haunted by the idea that any future employer might stumble across that humiliating video. I started looking into therapy. One local counselor agreed to see me, but with my insurance in disarray and my dad grumbling about the cost, it added to the tension at home. Still, therapy became a lifeline. The therapist acknowledged my anger toward Max, but also pushed me to take ownership of my part in it all. That was a tough pill to swallow. I wanted to blame Max for retaliating so cruelly, and Graham for dragging me into his mess. But she reminded me, none of it would have happened if I had said no from the start. I'd leave every session emotionally drained, caught in a storm of guilt and rage, feeling like no one truly saw my side. The nightmares made it worse. Again and again, I'd dream I was stuck in a crowd, and that awful video would start playing on massive screens. Laughter would ripple through the air, people pointing, mocking. I'd wake up gasping, soaked in sweat, heart racing. In those raw, early morning moments, I mourned the life I'd lost, the one where I used to scroll through wedding blogs, imagining my future. That version of my life had vanished without a trace. What remained was a tainted reputation, a house filled with unspoken judgment, and a future I couldn't even picture clearly. I never had a chance to speak to Max after it all unraveled. He gave me no opportunity to explain, to apologize, or even to argue. He lit the fuse, stepped away, and let the internet do the rest. I sometimes wonder if he watched the wreckage unfold with satisfaction. I can imagine him reading the comments, seeing me shredded online. He must have known how badly it would hurt. One night, feeling desperate, I messaged a few old friends from high school, hoping someone might have a spare room I could rent. Most never replied. One gently turned me down, saying she couldn't handle any extra stress right now. She didn't have to say it. I could sense the fear. She didn't want my baggage dragging itself into her life. That rejection landed harder than I expected. In the end, I had nowhere to go but back to my parents' house, where every day felt like trying not to trip on eggshells. I kept replaying that night with Graham in my mind, him scrambling for his pills, cursing his age, while I stood there, feeling a mix of pity and silent frustration. He'd always said Max wasn't right for me, that I needed someone older, someone who truly appreciated me. Yet there he was, relying on medication just to feel adequate. The irony still stings. If I'd had any self-respect, I would have walked out that night. But I stayed, grasping at the illusion that I mattered to someone. That night replays over and over, tangled up in shame and regret. Sometimes I stumble across the jewelry Graham gave me, still tucked in a box I never fully unpacked. The pieces catch the light, glittering, beautiful but meaningless now. I've thought about getting rid of them, maybe donating or selling them, but they feel cursed, too painful to keep, too loaded to throw away. Once my mother found the box and demanded I give it all back. "It's blood money," she spat. I snapped at her that it wasn't her business. It turned into a shouting match. My dad sided with her and I slammed my door in frustration. I know they see me as someone who traded integrity for ease. Part of me still screams that Max's coldness pushed me toward Graham. But deep down, I know the decision was mine. Any justifications I make crumble when I look them in the eyes. The public spectacle may have faded as time passed and new gossip took over. But the fallout in my personal life stayed put. My parents only half-heartedly support me. Max's family now sees me as a disgrace. My friends don't know how to treat me. Should they pity me or judge me? With no job and no income, I rely on parents who barely hide their resentment. It's stifling. Sometimes I wonder if Max and Graham ever talked about what happened. Did they turn against each other? Did Max cut ties with Graham? Or did Graham rewrite the story, painting me as the manipulative one? I doubt I'll ever know. All I have are fragments of speculation, none of which bring me peace. My therapist helped me realize I can't live in this emotional limbo forever. Eventually, I'll need to start fresh. Maybe move to a place where no one knows my name. I've even thought about wiping all traces of myself online, applying for jobs where no one could connect me to that video. But the idea of sitting through interviews terrifies me. What if someone uncovers it? That fear sticks to me like skin I can't shed. People are brutal, and I'm not ready to face that yet. One session, my therapist asked me to write a letter to Max, a way to pour out everything I hadn't said. I filled pages. I wrote with anger, sorrow, desperation. I accused him of destroying me, of casting me as the villain to the world. I begged to understand why he never gave us a chance to talk, to try and fix what had been broken. I finished that session with a fragile hope that maybe he finally understood the extent of the damage he caused. My hands shook as I read my letter aloud, voice cracking, and by the time I reached the end, tears were streaming freely. It felt like a kind of closure, the closest I'd ever come to it, though instead of peace, it left behind a hollow ache. Since that day, I've been wading through the aftermath, partly from choices I regret, and partly from Max's ruthless retaliation. Even something as ordinary as a quick stop at the store or a trip to the bank fills me with unease, expecting stares or judgment. Maybe I'm imagining it, or maybe I deserve it. Max unleashed something online that refuses to fade. A single search dredges up the post that started it all, and with it, the rumors roar back to life. I feel trapped in a cycle, shame tangled with anger. There are moments when I remember that I betrayed his trust first, but then the rage resurfaces because what he did in response was vicious. He had alternatives. He could have confronted me, broken up with dignity, allowed us both to move forward without carnage. But instead, he made it a spectacle, a public execution of our relationship. I still hear the bitterness in the messages from his family, cold, cruel, unforgiving. No matter how sorry I am, to them, I'll always be the one who chose an older, wealthier man over their son. Sometimes I catch myself wishing I could talk to Max again, even if it ended in yelling. Silence is its own kind of torment. There are things I still want to ask: why he did it, how he filmed it without me knowing, whether he ever felt even a flicker of guilt for what he turned me into. But there's been nothing, no message, no explanation, no apology. The man who once shared his mornings, his dreams, his future with me has vanished like a ghost. Graham disappeared too. In my more deluded moments, I picture him reaching out, saying sorry, admitting he cared, owning up to the part he played in all of this. Maybe even telling me it was more than just lust, that he regrets leaving me to weather the fallout alone. But that's just fantasy. Men like him, cushioned by money and distance, don't deal with consequences. He's probably tucked away in some high-rise, pretending I never existed. Sometimes I pull out the wedding invitation we once made together, the ink still elegant, announcing a celebration that never happened. It feels like a prop from a play I never got to perform. I was so intoxicated by the thrill of secrecy that I didn't see what I stood to lose. And while I was lost in that excitement, Max was already plotting his revenge. That invitation speaks to a version of us that never truly was. One where we resolved things with words instead of silence and sabotage. What I'm left with now are sleepless nights and a relentless tide of regret. I know I can't remain here much longer. The whispers follow me like a shadow, and even my parents are eager for my departure. I've started applying to jobs in cities far from here, though the idea of needing a reference makes my stomach twist. My manager at the boutique didn't exactly encourage me, told me I should sort out my personal mess first. Not the most reassuring send-off, but I don't have a choice. My dad has given me a deadline, just a few months before I have to move out. My mother can't even look me in the eye, let alone offer comfort. She's drowning in shame, just like I am. To most people, I probably look like a cautionary tale, someone who sabotaged her own life. And maybe they're not wrong. But I still feel like both men used me in their own ways. Max ignored me for months, then lashed out when it suited him. Graham knew exactly how to charm me, and when everything imploded, he disappeared without a trace. That doesn't excuse what I did, but it's the narrative I hold on to when everything feels like it's unraveling. I refuse to cast myself as the villain in every scene. If there's a moral here, maybe it's painfully obvious. Don't cheat. Don't try to patch emotional holes with fleeting highs and empty promises. Don't believe a man when he offers escape without consequence, because there's always a cost. And never underestimate the fury of someone you've betrayed. People say this whole ordeal should serve as a warning. I just wish I'd heard it before living it firsthand. As I finish writing this, my eyes land on the ring box Max left behind. The lid's still slightly open, like it's waiting for something that'll never arrive. It's a quiet monument to how quickly everything crumbled. There's no fantasy ending for me anymore. No belief that secrets can be buried forever. The road ahead is unclear, but I can't stay frozen in place, endlessly rereading cruel comments from strangers. I'll gather what strength I still have, pack my things, and try to build something new, somewhere far away from here. Yes, I still hold Max accountable for his vindictiveness, and Graham for playing with fire, mocking Max behind closed doors, then walking away when the flames got too high. But rebuilding? That falls on me. No one's coming to save me from this. Maybe this is the price of my own recklessness. Maybe I'll grow stronger, or maybe I'll keep floundering for a while. What I do know is this. I want to walk down a street where no one knows my name, where I'm not met with side eyes or whispers, a place where I can finally just exist without shame. If I ever saw Max again, I'm not sure whether I'd scream or shatter. If Graham appeared, I doubt I'd hide my fury at how easily he discarded me. But I'll probably never get that closure. The ones who helped destroy this chapter of my life are gone. And I'm left, alone, to face what's left behind. That's the story behind my name becoming an internet joke. If there's any light in this darkness, it's that I still have time to create something real, something honest, something new. I just wish the lesson hadn't come wrapped in such brutal disgrace. This story has come to an end. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you like this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you. See. They lived side by side for over 30 years. He was a humble auto mechanic. She, a graduate of the Wharton School of Business. He worked night shifts so she could study. She promised everything they were building was forever. But one forgotten envelope, a single line on a prescription, and then came a silence too loud to ignore. He didn't ask questions. He started observing. And by the time she thought she had everything under control, he was already packing her suitcase. Not out of anger, but out of pain. Out of the realization that betrayal doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers, sometimes it smiles, and sometimes it holds another man's hand in the shadows of a restaurant. Her career didn't collapse because of a failed presentation, but because someone took her materials right from under her nose. 5 years passed, and the silence was broken again. But this time, not by her. A stranger's family stood at the door. A little girl caught between life and death, and only one name appeared on her birth certificate. His, even though he hasn't been able to have children in years. Or has he? Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If you're here for the first time, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends or family. It really helps my channel a lot. Please tell me in which city or country you watch this video. I value every one of your comments. So, let's get started. For the past 4 months, Ophelia had been steering a high-stakes initiative. Though she wasn't the originator of the project, the responsibility for its success fell squarely on her shoulders as the appointed lead. The outcome was crucial not just for the Covington Group's trajectory, but for her own future as well. A misstep wouldn't simply be a career setback, it could spell disaster for the entire organization. Ophelia had earned her bachelor's at Albright, followed by an MBA from Wharton. No one in our family ever questioned her brilliance. Compared to her, my path had been much simpler. I went into the trades straight out of high school and built a career as a mechanic. I'd stayed in that lane for more than 20 years. It was steady, honest work that brought a quiet pride. It also paid enough to get Ophelia through college and raise our 2 kids. We never splurged, but we never went without what we truly needed either. Just 3 months after our wedding, both of us still just teenagers, Ophelia learned she was pregnant. The early days weren't easy. We moved in with my parents, who still lived in a large house that had emptied out as my siblings left. The upside? Extra hands to help with the baby while Ophelia juggled her studies. Balancing motherhood and a degree wore her down, but she persevered, finishing her undergraduate program in 6 years. Meanwhile, I grabbed every overtime shift I could. When Ophelia completed her MBA, we finally settled into a place of our own. She received offers from several top firms, but each one came with a relocation demand. I was willing to pack up and go, but she wanted to stay near our hometown. That's why she chose Covington. It offered stability, good compensation, and potential for growth. Whatever Ophelia committed to, she gave it everything. She immersed herself in her career with unwavering focus. Her big presentation was set for Thursday at the upscale Reason Hotel in Philadelphia. I scheduled time off to support her, though my main contribution was preparing meals. Honestly, I never fully grasped the details of her job, and didn't feel I had to. The corporate lifestyle had never appealed to me. Ophelia mentioned that executives would be flying in from Europe, Asia, and South America, all on Covington's budget. Given the company's already strained finances, it struck me as a gamble. This wasn't just about her performance. It had implications for over 200 employees. Everything seemed to be progressing smoothly until Tuesday night. That evening, Ophelia walked in wearing a tailored gray suit and a crisp white blouse. She laid out her belongings meticulously across the guest bed. She wasn't a stickler for chores, but when it came to work, she was meticulous. I noticed she'd packed elegant lingerie, though I said nothing. Next to her business clothes were cocktail dresses for the evening mixers. I normally avoided corporate events, but this time, I was ready to tag along if she asked. She thanked me, then gently declined. Earlier that day, she'd packed all her presentation materials into her Volvo's trunk, checking and rechecking. Wednesday was her prep day, time to network and get settled. That night, while she showered, I made a choice I'd soon regret. Wanting to help, I began arranging her things. As I moved her makeup bag, a white envelope fell out. It was from a pharmacy we didn't usually use. Inside were 10 pills with brief, unusual directions. Take one now, another in 12 hours if necessary. The prescription bore her name. I was puzzled. At first I assumed it was for anxiety, but the instructions didn't match anything like that. I slipped it back into place and tried to calm my racing thoughts. I couldn't bring myself to ask her outright. It would mean confessing I'd snooped through her things, which I wasn't proud of. After she fell asleep, I sat down at the computer and typed in the drug's name. Within minutes, I had my answer. I crawled into bed next to her, but I didn't sleep. My mind wouldn't stop churning. The pills were emergency contraception, and I'd had a vasectomy a decade ago. By morning, I felt hollowed out. I wandered the neighborhood, hoping the fresh air would clear my head. It didn't. When I came home, a quiet dread hung over me. Our son, Elliot, was stationed with the Navy in San Diego. Our daughter, Sarah, had just relocated to Dallas with her new husband. Now it was just Ophelia and me. I missed our children, but I had looked forward to this next chapter with her. She had been my only love. But now, everything I thought I knew felt uncertain. If Ophelia had been unfaithful, she'd hidden it flawlessly. I'd never checked her phone, never monitored where she went. I never had a reason to. I'd trusted her completely. When I returned, she was in the kitchen. "Where have you been? Want some eggs or something?" she asked casually. "Just coffee," I replied, keeping my tone low. She tilted her head, sensing something. "You okay, babe? It's just 3 days. You could come along, but honestly, you'd be bored out of your mind." "I'm not going," I said, "but I hate being here alone. I worry when you're not around." She smiled softly. "You're sweet. I'll be fine. I'm mostly at the hotel today, just prep work and socializing. Tomorrow's jam-packed from start to finish. I won't even have time to eat. I'll be home Friday afternoon. We'll have a great weekend, just you and me. You know what I mean." Her words were meant to reassure me, but they didn't. "I hope you can see why this is hard for me," I said, trying to keep the edge out of my voice. "I'm just a guy who fixes cars, and I ended up married to this amazing woman whose career is really taking off. Sometimes it feels like your job means more to you than our family does." She spun around to face me, her expression tight. "Don't do that," she said sharply. "I've always respected what you bring to this family. You've raised 2 great kids. You were there for me when I went back to school. You're a wonderful partner and a great dad, and we'd be lost without you. Don't ever forget that," she added, starting to gather the breakfast plates while I finished the last sip of my coffee. "Should I give you a ring later?" I asked. She shook her head. "Better not. I'm turning off my phone and unplugging the one in the room. I need to catch up on some sleep, but I'll call when I can." I helped her load the last few bags into the trunk as she reviewed her travel checklist with her usual attention to detail. The drive to the Reason Hotel would take her about 3 hours. I stood on the porch as she pulled away, suppressing the urge to ask about the pills. I stayed out there long after the car disappeared, overtaken by a heavy sense of uncertainty. I felt small, like I was in a world that no longer made room for me. Just a small-town guy married to someone who had become something else entirely. Had I missed the signs? Were they there all along and I simply looked away? As I buttoned up my shirt, the landline rang. "Hey, honey," Ophelia chirped. "Just letting you know I got here fine. No issues on the road, barely any traffic. I'll ring you later tonight." Her tone was light, cheerful even, but something inside me had shifted. I knew I wouldn't be able to hear her voice the same way anymore. I'm in room 714 if you need to get in touch. I might also swing by my parents or drop in on my brother. Okay, love you, she said. Yeah, I replied, but the line was already dead. I didn't rush to Philadelphia. I made a few stops along the way, including grabbing a cheesesteak. I figured I'd need the fuel. I wasn't sure exactly what I was going to do. When I eventually reached the hotel, I stayed parked in the garage, unable to make myself move. My phone rang and pulled me back into the moment. Jackson, everything's settled. I'm heading down to meet some folks for dinner, she said. You didn't leave anything behind, did you? No, I've got it all. Everything I need for tomorrow's presentation is in my room. Are you sure you don't need anything? I'm good. Try to take it easy, Jackson. I'm shutting my phone off now. I'll check in with you tomorrow, I said, forcing a small laugh. Don't think of this as fun, Jackson, she said bluntly. It's work. And with that, she ended the call. I wandered through the lobby, blending in with the crowd. The hotel was buzzing, full of people, busy restaurants, packed conference rooms. I moved around easily, unnoticed. I snagged a brochure from the front desk to get a better idea of the layout, pretending to be just another guest. I didn't have a plan in mind. If I ran into Ophelia, I'd figure it out on the fly. A large screen listed the event schedule and room bookings. Curiously, there was no listing for the Covington group that evening. Ophelia had told me she'd be staying in the hotel all night, but now I wasn't so sure. There were 3 places to eat: a family-style place, a casual diner, and a high-end lounge. Knowing her tastes, I skipped the family option and checked out the casual spot. She wasn't there. I had better luck in the upscale venue. She was tucked away in a shadowy booth at the back, an ideal spot for privacy. She wore a striking black dress with a plunging neckline, her pearl necklace glinting under the dim lights. She looked radiant. The people at her table seemed taken with her. I recognized a few colleagues, but the man seated across from her was unfamiliar, though his face sparked something in my memory. The lounge wasn't crowded. I easily slipped into a nearby table. Each one had a candle in a glass holder. I blew mine out, telling the waiter it bothered my eyes. I ordered my usual chicken dish and let him refill my coffee multiple times. Hey, I said casually, nodding toward the man at Ophelia's table. He looks familiar. Do you know who he is? The server leaned closer. That's Nolan Whitaker. He's on the city council. Word is he's prepping for a congressional run. That his wife with him? He shook his head. Nope. First time I've seen her. He usually reserves that booth for, well, important meetings, if you know what I mean. I offered a polite nod and asked for the check. I'd never seen Ophelia behave that way around another man, so engrossed, so attentive. It wasn't overtly romantic, not inappropriate per se, but it was definitely more than professional. As I left, they were uncorking their second bottle of wine. And then it all made sense. Why she'd packed that expensive lingerie. I discovered a secluded corner in the hotel lobby where I could sit unnoticed. Roughly 10 minutes passed before I saw them emerge from the restaurant. Ophelia's hand laced tightly with his as they made their way toward the elevators. My gaze stayed fixed on the display above the doors, tracking the numbers as they rose. When the elevator halted at the 3rd floor, a flicker of relief passed through me. She hadn't taken him to her suite. But then, the elevator didn't continue upward to the 7th floor. That's when the sinking feeling hit. I knew she'd gone to his room instead. I stayed put in the lobby, watching the elevator cycle through floors as guests came and went. An hour dragged by. Ophelia never returned. Eventually, I left the building, went to the car, and retrieved my unused suitcase. I approached the front desk with calm persistence. Even though I had proof of being her husband, it wasn't easy convincing them to issue a key card. After they rang the room and received no answer, they finally relented. Key in hand, I took the elevator up to room 714. I didn't switch on the lights after stepping inside. I sat quietly in the shadows for more than an hour, making sure she wouldn't walk in mid-process. Once I felt secure, I began packing. Every article of clothing, every personal belonging, nothing was left behind. Her prescription bottle still sat on the dresser, 10 pills inside. On the desk were her materials for the next day's presentation, neatly arranged. I packed all of it, 24 custom-bound packets, 20 regular folders, the projector and her laptop. Everything went into the suitcase. I grabbed her handbag and phone too. She'd only carried a small clutch with her, likely just for makeup. After a final sweep, I placed her car keys and my wedding ring on the dresser. Aside from those 2 items, the room was stripped clean. I made my way down to the garage with both bags without trouble. Within 20 minutes, I was cruising northbound on the highway. Around 3 a.m., my phone rang. Her name lit up the screen. I answered. "Jackson," she said. "Where are you?" "I'll be home soon," I replied. She said nothing. I waited, remembering how salespeople say whoever speaks first loses. The pause stretched out long enough to feel eternal. Finally, she spoke again. "I'm sorry." Her voice was quiet. She didn't ask anything. Then she ended the call. I turned off the phone. She must have returned to her own room. Later that morning, she was supposed to present at a major meeting, one that might have earned her a promotion and stabilized the company's trajectory. I stashed both suitcases in the attic above the garage. By that point, it didn't seem to matter anymore. I packed up my essentials, clothes, toiletries, and by the time the banks opened, I'd drained every account in my name. I had enough tucked away to get by temporarily, though I knew I'd need work soon. I spent a couple of days wandering the Luray Caverns, then rented a modest room outside Whiteville. That Sunday, I called Sarah. She already knew. Ophelia had confessed. She'd admitted to the affair. I had found out. I walked away, and Ophelia lost her job. I felt some guilt, but it was a consequence she'd have to carry. By Monday afternoon, I'd already found work. Handymen are always needed. Weeks passed. Sarah told me Ophelia had moved back in with her parents. Later, I heard from Elliot, calling from San Diego. He didn't criticize his mother, and I appreciated that. That was it. No big finale, no dramatic closure, like in the movies. Just life, moving ahead in quiet, steady increments. A new rhythm took shape. I talked to Sarah at least once a week, and Elliot and I began exchanging emails now and then. Sarah kept in touch with Ophelia but never gave me details about her life. I never filed for divorce. As far as I knew, neither did she. I got a Tennessee driver's license, updated the Subaru's registration, and started going out to a local bar occasionally. In time, I began casually seeing 2 different women. Both were fine with keeping things simple, which suited me well. It all feels like another lifetime now. Eventually, Ophelia stopped occupying my thoughts. The Subaru began acting up after passing the 2,000-mile mark. One evening, sipping a beer, I realized 5 years had passed since I left. I stayed in close contact with both kids. Sarah now had 2 children of her own and had started nudging me to come visit. Elliot had almost gotten married but called it off just before the wedding. I worked 6 days a week, using Sundays to recover from Saturday nights. So when someone knocked on my trailer door at 6 in the morning on a Friday, I was not in the mood. I opened the door in my boxers. A woman stood there, looking as awkward as I felt. The man beside her looked completely unfazed. "Usually I'd wear pants," I said dryly. "But surprise guests like you don't get that courtesy." "We're looking for Jackson Carver," the man said. I didn't know either of them. "I don't know you," I replied. "My name's Darren Caldwell. This is my wife, Elizabeth. We're hoping you can help us with something." "Not at this hour," I said. "If it's car trouble, try the mechanic down the road." They didn't leave. They just stood there, staring. "This isn't about your job," the man began. "It's more personal than that. Mind if we come in?" Inside, my trailer was a mess, papers scattered, dishes piled up. I wasn't used to having company, so cleaning had never been a priority. Even women I dated usually preferred to meet at their places. "Make yourselves comfortable," I said, moving toward the back. Let me put on some pants. I left the door open behind me and grabbed a shirt. Want some coffee? I offered, tugging it on. It'll be ready in 10, I added. Still, they said nothing. After a moment, the woman spoke. We adopted a daughter. She's 4. She needs a bone marrow transplant. We're hoping you might be a match. We're willing to compensate you, the man added quickly. I gave them a look. You're trying to buy my bone marrow? It sounded ridiculous, but they weren't kidding. Their tone was serious, even desperate. Okay, I said, softening. Tell me more. The best chance is a partial match from a biological relative. Based on what we know, you're our strongest lead. I think there's a misunderstanding, I told them. When was she born? She turns 5 in July, the woman answered. Her name is Emily Caldwell. I blinked, taken aback. That can't be. I had a vasectomy 15 years ago. Biologically, I couldn't have fathered her. Then why is your name on her birth certificate? She asked. I've got no idea, I said. You'll have to ask her mother. There was a pause. And her mother is Ophelia Lane Carver. The name landed like a gut punch. I froze. Damn. I remembered the pills she'd given me back then. If I hadn't taken them, this child might not exist. I understand now, I said quietly. Sorry for how I reacted. I'll do whatever I can to help. The man leaned forward. Why isn't Ophelia a donor? She's too sick, the woman explained. Her liver is failing. Doctors have ruled her out for surgery. They've given her less than 6 months. I was floored. That's impossible. She used to be so healthy. Why won't they take her consent? They say she can't legally give it. You mean she's not mentally competent? They didn't answer. Not long ago, these people had meant nothing to me, but now I felt responsible. Do I have any other children who could be a match? I asked. Maybe, the woman said, but we truly believed you were our best hope. Why not track down her real father? We thought it was you. Ophelia never mentioned anyone else, and now she's too sick to clear it up. Most of what we know came from the agency. I poured some coffee and tried to think. Where are you from? Westchester, Pennsylvania. I nodded. Here's the deal. I'll tell you who I think the real father might be, but you've got to promise to go after him, full force. He'll deny it, maybe even try to bury you in legal threats. But if you push hard enough, maybe guilt will do the rest. Who is he? The man asked. Nolan Whitaker. He's campaigning for the Senate. He'll do anything to avoid a scandal. They exchanged a look, hope flickering between them. We can work with that, the man said firmly. Before they left, I gave them contact info for Sarah and Elliot, just in case. Then I asked about Ophelia. I had a feeling I'd be in Pensacola before they even made it back to Pennsylvania. I cleaned up, trimmed my hair, put on a decent shirt. Despite everything Ophelia had done to shake up my life, I wanted to look presentable when I saw her again. Finding her place wasn't hard. Her trailer was newer than mine, in better shape. An old Volvo sat in the driveway, one tire flat, the windshield cracked like a spiderweb. The woman who answered wasn't Ophelia. She looked worn out, early 50s, maybe late 40s. Well, she said, eyeing me. Didn't expect you. She introduced herself as Rachel Adams. Come on in. I stepped inside. I came to see Ophelia. She pointed to a brass urn on a nearby shelf. She's right here, Jackson. I stared at it, frozen. Mind if I grab a beer? I muttered. Rachel explained that Ophelia moved to Pensacola after giving her baby up. She used her severance pay from the Covington Group to buy the trailer, drained her savings, and began drinking herself into oblivion. She didn't date, didn't go out. Rachel stuck around, covering her expenses when she could. 3 years later, Ophelia was gone. Strangely, she'd left a will. She gave me the trailer and the Volvo. She barely worked after quitting her job. Took odd jobs here and there, but nothing stuck. It was like she'd given up entirely. Rachel, who clearly loved her, said Ophelia had no fight left. She mentioned me often, but never once tried to get in touch, even after Sarah passed her my number. She never reached out. Maybe that one night, what I did left a wound she could never close. And now, somehow, that pain hit me harder than ever. I stayed at Rachel's for a couple of weeks, but the atmosphere quickly became intolerable. I ended up practically giving the trailer away for next to nothing, sold it for $1, and managed to unload the Volvo for $3,000. Within 2 days, I found myself in Westchester, dropping in on Darren and Elizabeth, who I'd only recently gotten to know. At first, Nolan Whitaker resisted. He clung to denial, doing everything he could to ignore the reality closing in on him. But Darren and Elizabeth were relentless, and under their persistent pressure, his defenses eventually gave way. Nolan demanded a paternity test, and the results confirmed what everyone had quietly suspected. He was the father. With no other options and trying to salvage what was left of his pride, he reluctantly agreed to go through with the bone marrow donation. The procedure was medically successful, but the consequences in his public and private life were catastrophic. His approval numbers nosedived, and his political party replaced him with a fresh candidate just months ahead of the election. His wife filed for divorce, making sure the entire scandal played out in the spotlight. Meanwhile, Rachel and I are on the road to Dallas to visit Sarah and the grandkids. I'm not sure how long Rachel intends to stay, maybe only until someone else comes along to fill the emotional gap. For now, it feels like we're in a delicate truce, a brief lull before the next inevitable upheaval. This story has come to an end. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you like this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you